And there's a lot of CMC clinicians in the room, which is super nice. And just want to say hello to Dave Lane, who finally came out of the Berkshires to be a part of the NISPA PAC again. He used to be president a long time ago, so it's nice to have him back out of the Berkshires. So just a little context before I talk about the invitation to change approach, which is essentially a harm reduction strategy for family members. Is to just give you a little context of how it all came to be. Andrew already gave the preamble that I was going to give, so I get to shave off some of the stuff that I was going to talk about just in terms of how much our industry, and it is an industry, has changed, thankfully, and thanks to all of you and people who are talking about harm reduction strategies and really saying, hey, we need to widen who we're trying to help. The treatment industry has been very narrow. And we built CMC essentially from clients who were rejected by other programs because they weren't ready to change. They were on medications that the programs thought were a sign they weren't serious about recovery. So, things are a lot different for the person with the problem. What I'm going to be talking about today is how little has changed for family members, and they're our biggest resource. So we should be working on trying to help them as well. And I was really listening to Andrew's talk and, again, seeing the overlap of so much what he was talking about our therapist experience and what we need to deal with when we're working with people who are incredibly high risk. And if you think about the feelings that we have in our work with these clients who are incredibly high risk, put those feelings in a parent and imagine being a parent, imagine being a partner, imagine being the child of somebody who has a substance use problem. So those feelings that we have to work so hard at managing and using constructively and sitting with family members, that those feelings are amplified 1,000 times over. So that's really what the invitation to change approach is designed to try to help them with. We, as many of you know, we started CMC 20 years ago. That is shocking. It ages me. And we were trained by Bob Myers in Craft probably 6 months into when we started. So we really bought into Craft. We were out in the world talking about Craft, trying to get treatment programs to use Craft. And, we would give talks about Craft, and I'd say, who knows about Craft? Crickets. There wouldn't be a single hand risen. Now, when you give talks about Craft, you get lots of, how many people in this room know about Craft, right? Almost everybody, right? So that's a significant, really wonderful change. And Craft is a wonderful set of strategies that was designed to get a loved one into treatment, a treatment-resistant loved one. Wonderful set of strategies. And Fred Munch is here somewhere. About 10 years ago, we were approached by the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids to try to bring Craft to lay people. They had all these really fired up parents who wanted to give back to other parents. And these parents had been profoundly beaten up by the treatment system. A lot of them have had children who have overdosed and died. And they wanted to support other parents and give other parents advice that was based out of evidence-based ideas instead of what is really shared among lay people, which is everything that we hear in the culture, right? Like Andrew said, we're all steeped in it, and family members are steeped in it. They hear, you gotta use tough love, distance yourself, there's nothing you can do. If you do anything, you're an enabler. That is all in their minds, right? So these family members wanted to try to share Craft with other parents, right, on a 1-800 hotline. Genius idea, we thought, which is because we also know there's not going to be enough treatment providers ever to deal with this problem. And we know a lot of people are never going to seek treatment. And some people don't need to go to treatment to change. So we thought, okay, great. If we get these lay people to share this information, it's going to go out further in the world. And we did that for several years, created a really lovely program with the partnership. But in doing these trainings, so we would get these parents, and these were a fired up bunch of people. Remember, they really wanted to do this, and they struggled. They struggled with picking up some of the concepts of Craft, I think largely because of those messagings in their mind and the ideas of Craft positive reinforcement, all of these things. It's very hard to shift gears and do that when you've got this idea, I have to distance myself, or if I'm helping, I'm an enabler. So we really wanted to try to figure out, and it also, Craft has a huge element of it about self-care, right? But family members, going back to Andrew's talk, are terrified. They're dealing with profoundly painful emotions, and we have to help them deal, and craft isn't really designed to deal with the complexity of that. And family members are in for the long haul, right? They're not just until I get my loved one into treatment. They need to be able to be supported over a long period of time and kind of shift their ideas of how change happens. So what we've done in the Invitation to Change approach is really try to bring some other elements that we felt like were missing in the craft model so that this can be used by a wider group of helpers. So that's a little background. And Dr. Jeff Foote is, raise your hand so they know where you are. We were going to do this talk together, and we thought it was completely nuts that we would stand up here and try to ham and egg it, and the talk would be 2 hours because we can't help ourselves. So I'm just going to try to run through it. So the Invitation to Change is located in our foundation center, CMC Foundation for Change. A lot of you know us through our for-profit works. We've got the outpatient program and the residential program in the Berkshires. We love those programs, and they're wonderful and in line with what Andrew was talking about. And they've been laying the groundwork and the track work for the Foundation for Change, which is really what our heart has always been in, which is to try to get these evidence-based ideas into different communities, into communities who don't have access, don't have financial resources, and again, people who may never seek treatment. We really want to try to, and this is a grassroots effort. You know, Andrew was talking about the key part of harm reduction is like the grassroots. Families are on the ground. And they really are the ones that are in their communities possibly making significant changes. So these are the goals of our mission, the mission of the CMC Foundation for Change. And once I start talking about the Invitation to Change, we really do have the goal of giving communities of all kinds a setup that they can take into their community and make the Invitation to Change their own. Because we all talk different languages, we all have different cultural backgrounds, and there's different things that resonate with different communities. So we've tried to create a set of principles that people can take into their community and use it as they need, and giving them the resources and a variety of different resources so they can go back to the foundation and get what they need to get ongoing support. We're not just going to come in, train them, leave, say, good luck, hope it goes well. We want to create a space where they can come back, get support, and get continued training. Andrew did a great job of talking about the heaviness of the need out there. This is the number of people in each of these age groups that meet criteria for a substance use problem and are not in treatment. And again, I'm going to keep going back to the point that not everybody seeks treatment, and that's okay. So I want to expand what we're thinking about in terms of what is helpful too. It's not all about treatment. So I'm going to shift and talk about, I'm going to try not to spill that water. We'll see how that goes. The number of family members. So those numbers for people who have the problem, and Andrew spoke eloquently about the number of people who've overdosed and died. We think that if you think about every person with a substance use problem, there's 4 or 5 people intimately close to them that are being adversely affected in some way, whether it's financially stressed, emotionally stressed, the physical demands of living with all that uncertainty. Family members are really getting the brunt force of, people who are using substances at a high level are getting the brunt force to their bodies. Family members are getting that too. And family members also struggle with the shame and stigma that is in our culture, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that effect in a second. But the numbers of family members being infected are massive, and their suffering is profound. And part of the reason that is because these are all the things that are said to family members in the culture and in different treatment programs. You're enabling, you have a disease too. Go to Al-Anon meetings, you got to detach. I just met with a mother this week who saw me in my office because she had a treatment program tell her again and again and again that she was killing her kid by trying to help him. So think what that's like to sit with a family member. They're getting this message, you're too lax, you're too strict, you're too involved, you're not involved. Nothing is right? Anything that they're doing is wrong in some way, and they feel this really intensely. And Jeff and I wrote a chapter for Jonathan Avery about stigma and how it affects family members. And I had the felt sense and lived experience of working with these families. I know what they say, but the research is actually pretty significant and also quite painful in terms of the impact of stigma, in particular for family members. Where they are embarrassed. They're embarrassed in their community. They know they're being judged, and they are being judged. And they're judged for causing the problem and not being able to fix it. There was one interesting study about community spread and how if a family has a person with a significant substance use in their home, that the school knows, the police department knows, the institutions around them in their community knows that family has a problem. Right? So that family is walking around knowing that on some level, whether it's very direct and overt or covert. And family members do what we all do when we're feeling shameful. They go underground, they hide, they want to withdraw, they're defensive. They're fearful of gossip and all the things Andrew outlined in terms of what things are said to substance users. Those things are said to family members as well. They hear the community around them talk about their family member or talk about people who use drugs and alcohol, and they hear those hard, shameful words, stigmatizing language, and they know my loved one is that, right? So they are really feeling the impact of stigma. And there was one study that, we all talk about increasing access and needing to, support people being able to access treatment and the financial complications of treatment. It's actually stigma is the biggest barrier to seeking treatment. So we've got to go right at that stigma. And these are the things that treatment providers contribute to the problem. So I'm going to say that probably nobody in this room falls in this category, but it happens all the time out there. And family members really do feel judged. They feel criticized. They're told there's nothing they can do. They're excluded from treatment, and they really do feel completely hopeless. And it's a massive shame. So I don't know how many of you work with family members, but they're an incredibly motivated bunch. Like Andrew said, some people with substance use problems, they don't want to change. It's okay. It's a right to not make changes. The family around them, I promise you, is very motivated for change to happen. They really, really want change to happen. And we're not adequately harnessing the power of those families and the power of that influence and the power, and if you kind of think also about community as family, we're not harnessing the power of community around the person with the problem. They don't know how to approach the problem in an effective way, even though they desperately want to. So the invitation to change is trying to address that need. These are some of the things that people have posted on our social media. You can hear the impact of some of the things that are said to them and how they end up feeling. It sucks. It's bullshit, right? Tough love. What the heck is it? Why are they telling me to use tough love? What does that even mean? And I put the barbed wire heart because it is actually hard on the heart for family members to hear this. And so what we're trying to do is we're, again, going after this larger idea of community, larger idea of family, and really trying to empower them. We love it when professionals come, so as I go into the invitation to change here and tell you parts of what we're doing, it's awesome when treatment professionals participate and come in, and we've got more states and more treatment organizations training their recovery specialists, and more people are becoming interested in this idea of training professional helpers in the invitation to change. But the mission of the foundation really is to go to lay people and really help the people on the ground in the communities have access to these evidence-based, effective, compassionate ways of helping people with a problem. And like Andrew said, all kinds of risky behaviors, I think, can be addressed with this model. So it really is, we're talking about it as a helping model. This is not treatment. Treatment providers can use it, but I think it actually really shifts people's stance, in terms of how they're approaching the problem. And I'm going to talk about the fact that this has been an iterative process. We started out with craft, we started to add things to it, and we were doing all of these trainings, and we would hear what family members were able to pick up, what they were coming back to as that doesn't make any sense to me, or that makes a lot of sense, nobody said that before. And so we're taking their information and bringing it back and trying to take the language that we all use in terms of how we train each other, how we support each other, and how do we take that language and make it user-friendly for lay people so that they can talk to each other about it and it's going to make sense. A parent saying, hey, you got to use positive reinforcement to another parent. What does that mean, right? Got to sit there and unpack that, and what does that mean? So we just wanted to take all the shrinky language out of this and make it very user-friendly, and really trying to infuse compassion into the whole community and family. I'm not going to talk much about these elements, and I'm just going to put my papers down. Don't even need it. The elements in, so the treatment and the ideas behind in the invitation to change, these are all baked into the invitation to change. Like I said, we really started with craft and kind of stumbled onto the reality that craft doesn't do all the things that family members need it to do. So the action section of the invitation to change is largely craft. We've added a lot more MI to it to just really expand family members' capacity to have communications with their loved one that go in a productive direction, just like we try to use different strategies with clients, but also to really understand ambivalence from a different, like really deeply understand ambivalence and where it's coming from so that they can work with it. And then we added acceptance and commitment therapy ideas. Like one of the things Andrew was talking about was really being able to like tolerate some of the risk by being like really anchored with your own values, right? And being able to operate from a stance of your own values. And also the acceptance and commitment parts that we added were all about helping people relate to that pain that Andrew described us feeling. Again, that's amplified a million times over for a family member. So we really need it. And craft does not directly talk, craft talks a lot about self-care. It does not talk about like, what do you do with the pain and terror of caring for somebody who's in possibly very serious active use of substances and very risky behaviors. And then one of my favorite parts of this is, which I think is also not, and it's, I'm sure Bob would have put it in there, but when he developed craft however many decades ago, Kristen Neff's work and the work we know about self-compassion and the impact of self-compassion was not really out in the world yet. It is now, and it's incredibly effective and an important part of the invitation to change approach, because we could all use a little extra self-compassion. People with substance use problems and their families need buckets of it. So we've added that into the invitation to change approach. And the other thing that we're trying to do here is, and again, I feel like Andrew and I should have talked about our talks before we did this. We're really trying to help family members take their understanding, because they've got the idea of like, if my loved one just goes to rehab, if they're just abstinent, everything's going to be okay, right? They want that, that's what they've heard, and really helping them realize there's no right answer here, and we're not going to give you an answer. We're going to empower you to come up with the answer for your family, your community, and for your loved one. We're going to give you a set of strategies that you can take and turn them into your own, because you know your family best. You may not have the effective strategies and all the self-awareness that you need in order to be as effective as you want, but you know your family and your community and your resources. So we're going to empower you to engage in the change process within yourself and with your loved one in a completely different way than what you've heard. And these are some of the things that we're trying to help them understand are a process, starting with how you understand the problem. And that is a very foundational shift for family members, working on developing the self-awareness and self-compassion, learning how to communicate in ways that set the stage for positive change and then help people maintain it, and then really creating the environmental and relationship elements that will sustain change over the long haul. So it's really a sea change for family members in terms of like what they're thinking about from a helping perspective. And I do think this is very much a harm reduction approach for family members, because it's really helping them realize those incremental changes, and the value of that, the small positive changes, not looking for the end result all the time, and being able to like really engage when there's just a little half step forward, and being able to like regulate all of their emotions of like, I want much more change, but a half step got moved forward, so I'm going to really reinforce that, and I'm going to find a way to deal with this pain that I'm in. So let's move on to the invitation to change. So this is the whole wheel of the invitation to change. These are the elements within it. One of the things that I really want you to know is that we're trying to make this user-friendly to lots of different learning styles as well. We've got written content, of course, and worksheets and a workbook, which we can share with you, but we're also trying to make it visual icons, videos, audio, so that multiple different learning styles and families can benefit from this without getting locked into, I have to read something in order to understand. And so I'm going to talk about the different elements. And so I'm going to talk about all those little parts in the wheel, actually. But I'm going to, just for the rest of the talk, I'm going to go through one element of it a little bit more deeply so you know how we're kind of training family members and all the things that they have access to. And then I'll just skim through the rest and hope that you guys all come to a professional training and learn more about the invitation to change, because there's no way I can do it in 45 minutes. So those parts of the wheel, and I'm just going to keep toggling between these two. It all starts with helping with understanding. And so this is the big addition to craft. This is all the parts that we felt like you were having a hard time picking up craft because you're understanding the problem from this culturally complicated perspective. So we want to help you change that perspective. We've added a whole self-awareness section, which of course includes the self-care parts of craft, but we've really amplified it with the self-compassion and the idea of willingness, which is how you relate to pain. So we've added the awareness section, and then this bottom section, the action, is basically straight craft in lots of ways. And if you notice, right smack in the middle is this idea of practice. We really try to help family members. That's another big shift in family members realizing that substance use is a learned behavior, right? Your loved one learned to do it over a long stretch of time, potentially, and you don't get to actually just delete that part of your brain, right? You just can't unlearn something. They're going to have to learn a bunch of new things in order to change their behavior, and that's going to take practice. They're going to screw it up. They're going to have to find a different teacher. They're going to have to learn new things. So really the whole end and the idea that you as a loved one are also going to have to practice these new strategies, right? There's a lot of stuff in here that you're going to learn that may be very different for you. And we want to help you embrace the idea of, yep, I'm practicing. That conversation didn't go so well. I'm going to go back and practice. I'm not going to give up. So that's a big part of the invitation to change and a core principle that we're always going back to. So these are the parts of we've got the behaviors make sense, which is the one I'm going to go into a little bit more, so I'm going to skip through that. The idea of one size doesn't fit all, which many of you have said and know, which and Andrew talked about, like how everybody historically has been kind of jammed into, you need to change and this is how you need to do it. And family members have, I did an interview with somebody, and I thought, she was handling her partner's substance use in such a great way. Like, she was very flexible. She was using all these strategies. I was like, you kind of inherently know a lot of this stuff. And at the end of it, and I said, like, we were talking about options for her partner, and she disclosed that she was in a rage that he is not going to meetings, and that she thought he was not going to get better if he didn't go to meetings. So she had all of this awareness and all of these skills, and the idea of what he needed to do to get better was lodged in one idea, and she was having lots of feelings about it. So it was just an example to me of like, oh, had I not asked about that, I wouldn't have known that you were having such strong feelings about it, and that's really getting in your way. So this idea of one size doesn't fit all, we've got to really expand what people think of as helpful. And I'm going to keep going back to this. Treatment isn't the end-all, be-all. Family members often think it is, really helping them think about what's available in their communities, faith-based leaders. Like, there's lots of ways that people can get help. The idea of ambivalence is normal. This helping with awareness section, which is, you know what? How much time are you guys going to give me? This is going to determine. Well, I was supposed to end at 20 after, right? I started 10 minutes late. So do I have 10 minutes? 15? Okay. All right. I got to figure out how I want to get through this. So I'm going to skip through this. What?
Take the time you need, and we'll go into lunch if we need to.
Okay. Okay, great. So the behaviors make sense section, I'll just start here because I want to show you a video and try to get through this section. This is, again, so this is in a training what we would be exposing family members through. We're training lay people to start groups in their communities. These are the resources that they have so that they can start helping the people in their community understand. These are all the things that are said, right? These are all the things that people say about people with substance use problems. These phrases have an impact in terms of how you approach the problem. So what we're trying to do is change the perspective. And this idea that, and Andrew talked about like all the benefits of risk taking and what it feels like. And you know, people don't use drugs and alcohol because they're crazy bad people. They use drugs and alcohol because they work in some way for them. And it can oftentimes be incredibly compelling, right? So if it were just a matter of it's all bad, if your loved one did drugs, they'd say, ooh, that was hot. I don't want to burn my hand. I'm not going to do that anymore. That's not what happens, right? Something about it works. Something about it is very powerful. And that's why it's getting repeated. So what we try to do is help them step back and be curious. And we do exercises with them where we're like, so Debbie, what if I told you I could reduce all your stress at the end of work? And you could just go home, feel super peaceful, not have a care in the world. You'd take that, right? Right. Somebody who's got chronic pain, I've got a backache, I've been on my feet all day, and if I said I could take that pain away. So we use these examples with loved ones and with family members, and they like look at this list and they think, oh, these are all like really nice things and I can give it to you, I promise. And then we say, what if it was alcohol or heroin that was giving you these things? Does it change these things into something selfish, amoral, bad, right? These aren't inherently bad things to want. And these are the things that substances give us and a variety of other behaviors give us. And you can just see like family members go, oh, I really understand. Yeah, that integration, right? I see that. So we have a variety of different exercises that we give them to work on understanding their loved one. And, you know, Andrew was talking about the power of us taking a step back and understanding a person's perspective, understanding what they're getting. Family members being able to, and the collaboration that understanding lays the groundwork for. This is what family members need as well. Really being able to understand their loved one from a different perspective, one that actually makes a little sense. And we help them see that, you know, what somebody was using substances for in the beginning, like all these completely reasonable reasons in column 1. If the use has gone on for decades and is IV or, you know, the level of physical dependency is more, the power of what they're getting out of it and their attachment to it is going to be even more profound. So they're not going to just be able to give it up because you're upset about it. Or because they went to rehab, or the 10 other things that they think should be reasons why they give it up. So we really try to help them understand this. And I'm going to, is this the video that is not now going to show? Hang on a minute. Oh, that would be tragic. Does somebody have, I don't know how to use Apple. Does somebody know how to make that? Oh, here we go. We're good.
Imagine this scenario. You're walking down the side of a two-way street when you look up and see a person trying to cross. There's plenty of traffic and you can hear cars and trucks whooshing by. The person you notice looks impatient, upset, frantic, and does not seem to be considering the danger ahead of them. Instead, all they seem to be concerned about is getting to the other side of the street. Take a moment to consider the following. What are your thoughts and feelings about this person and their behavior? And what are some actions that those thoughts and feelings make you want to take? You may be thinking, what's wrong with them? What's making them crazy enough to try and cross traffic without thinking? Are they dangerous? You may be feeling scared for what's about to happen, anxious for the person you're watching, and confused by their behavior. Some actions you may want to consider include moving away from the situation by leaving so you don't have to see the person get hurt, or engaging in the situation by yelling at them to stop to try to promote a positive outcome. Continue imagining the same scenario, only now I'll give you a little bit more information. Before you saw this person, they had been driving further down the road with their dog in the back seat. At a stoplight, the dog jumped out of the car and began running through traffic. The person is now frantically trying to get the dog back inside of the car before it gets hurt. Now take a moment to consider the following. What are your thoughts and feelings about this person after learning about their reason for trying to cross such a busy street? What are some actions those thoughts and feelings make you want to take? You might be thinking, how can I help this person? How do I keep him safe when he's upset and not thinking about his own safety? You might be feeling compassion, sadness for the person's situation, and fear it might go badly. You may be more inclined to take action by offering to help, calling for more help, or trying to intervene in some way. The purpose of this exercise is to show that when another person's behavior seems irrational or erratic or scary in some way, in the way that substance use often does, it can push us into a let me get away from this or make it stop response, and make us want to move away from it entirely. It can be hard to see how to be helpful in these situations or to even want to help, while also experiencing our own set of thoughts and emotions as a bystander. By taking a moment to put the behaviors into a larger context, by understanding the why behind their behavior, we can start to make sense of the motivation behind them. We can then decide on a productive way to move forward. So let's think back to the scenario we just imagined. If we start off deciding that the person running in the road is doing it just because they're crazy, then we are also limiting ourselves from seeing the full picture. This way of thinking is natural, but does not facilitate positive action on our part. Instead, if we decide that the person trying to cross the road has a valid or a sympathetic reason for their behavior, we open ourselves up to more understanding. We can now accept new information and learn that the person is trying to find their dog. This information will most likely shift our thoughts and emotions surrounding the behavior, and we'll then be able to come up with, and want to come up with, a productive plan on how to help them. Finally, let's put this all in the context of substance use. If we decide that a person who is using substances is doing so just because they are an addict, aka a morally bankrupt, irresponsible person, we will very effectively shut out information that could help us understand their behaviors. And without that understanding, we won't be able to find a constructive way to offer support. However, if we open ourselves up to understanding that all behaviors make sense, we will learn that people use substances for valid reasons. Examples could include using substances to ease anxiety, feel more ready to handle daily life, or get to sleep despite physical pain. This type of information will then help us begin moving forward by supporting our loved ones in a productive way.
So that's just an example of the videos. So that's our attempt to go past written, constant written material and create videos. So, a mom in Oklahoma starts an invitation to change support group, and she can share this video in her group. She has access to it. She can send a video to somebody she wants to try to engage in group. So we're trying to make user-friendly things that lay people can share with each other to help somebody that they're trying to help understand the problem through a different way. And, just like Andrew talked about all the strategies that we use, having the understanding about what my loved one is doing accomplishes all of these things. It helps family members take it less personally, so they're less upset. They're still upset, but they just can reduce this idea of their being personally attacked. It increases empathy, which increases collaboration. And, the bottom part of the wheel, the action steps and the communication steps where families always want to go to first, they're like, just tell me what to do. If they don't understand the problem, it's actually very hard for them to know which strategies are going to be effective. So this foundational idea that behaviors make sense, and it also calms them, because this behavior that initially felt so crazy to them, they'll start to be able to see the predictability in it, it'll make it a little less random, and they'll understand the circumstances that trigger it. So which again just lowers that tension in their own nervous systems. And all of the parts of the model, the invitation to change model, we talk about how understanding this helps you as a helper, but how it ultimately helps the person that you're trying to help. And being able to see your loved one as a whole person, as a person who might be using substances, but also a person who is using substances because they're in pain, or using substances because they're socially anxious, or having a difficult time in school, or whatever it is. It really allows you to then use the communication strategies and the reinforcement strategies to help your loved one and talk to them. And it's really wonderful when you help family members talk to each other in a different way and have a parent talk to their kid without the scolding and without the lecturing, and just sit down and say, hey, I actually just want to understand, I don't approve of it, I wish you didn't do it, but I actually really want to understand it. You lower that defensiveness, you increase communication, they're able to share more information, and that's where the family can then start to be more helpful and make changes. So every part of the invitation to change has these elements where we're trying to expose them to what you've heard. We're going to try to change your perspective. We're going to try to help you understand behavior in a different way, and how you can work with behavior, and how you can use communication strategies in a different way. And I'm just going to skip for 1 second to so we all know ambivalence is normal, but family members don't know that, right? So when their loved one has made changes and then goes back to the old behavior, they get really upset, and they think, you weren't serious, you didn't really want to do this. So we have them go through, list all your negatives. Yes, all those negatives are there. Do they erase the positives? No, those positives are still there. We're going to work on finding replacement behaviors for the positives. We're going to try to help your loved one learn new things. All the thing in that, now I need to try X, Y, and Z, that's where practice and learning comes in. Those things don't work right away. The benefits that they're getting from the substance use, the alcohol works right away. Right? So we really try to help them expand this idea of this is going to take a while. This is going to take a lot of time and practice, and there's a lot of learning, and I need to bring myself to it, which is the awareness section. I might actually get through this. The awareness section, which is when I was listening to Andrew's talk, this is our attempt to really try to help them become aware of all the things that we need to become aware of just how am I doing? Where am I in all of this? Am I so keyed up that I'm about ready to have a panic attack every single time I try to talk to my loved one? That's probably not the time to talk to my loved one, right? I've got to learn different skills to learn to regulate myself so that I can come back and use these communication strategies at a different time. Really trying to help them identify their values, what kind of caretaker do you want to be? The tough love message, most parents don't want to be a tough caretaker, right? That just doesn't match with most parents' idea of what kind of parent I want to be. So really identifying your values and being able to hang on to them as you try to use these strategies. And these are all the ways that this self-awareness helps. It reduces that reactivity. There's a lot of mindfulness baked into this, just like Andrew was talking about. We need to be mindful. We need to be intentional. Family members need to do that. And that's not something that they get encouraged to develop. And this idea of willingness, I'm not going to be able to give it its due justice, but it's a really powerful thing for family members to realize that helping is a coin with two sides, right? There's all these ways we want to be a good helper. There's all these ways that we want things to change. And I'm just going to keep referencing Andrew. Helping is terrifying sometimes. It's terrifying, it's disappointing, things don't work out, and you can't shave off one side of the coin. You've got to be able to figure out how to pick up the whole coin. And so really helping family members wrestle with this idea of when I try to push pain away, that's when I get super controlling and I get in fights with my loved one. Or I completely detach and I cut myself off and I don't talk to them for 6 weeks, which sometimes may be really warranted and sometimes you might need to do that. But if you're doing that because you have no way to relate to pain in a different way, you're losing ground there and losing connection there that might really contribute to things changing. So we really try to help them relate to the pain of being a helper in a different way. We had a parent saying that once she got this idea of willingness, that it changed meaningless suffering into meaningful suffering. You can't escape the suffering. and as a family member. And then the self-compassion piece, which is just, I was so skeptical about it when I first started. I was like, it's like all this super nice self-compassion stuff. What's that all about? It's actually like such a profound shift for people when they start to learn how to bring internal, this idea of I'm suffering, this is hard, I'm human, I need to keep giving myself the shot to just come back to it, even though I feel like I screwed it up. It really like helps people learn from a different perspective and with more tolerance for the difficulties that come with learning. And we talk to parents about like, if you can bring this to yourself, you're going to be able to bring it to your kid. And I've never met a person who is in trouble with substances that wasn't lacking self-compassion. There is none, right? So we're trying to help them build that too. So if the system around them is compassionate, they're going to be more likely to be able to do that. So I think I have skipped through everything in a reasonable way, that you have a little touch point of each thing. The helping with action section really is, this is where craft is, so I'm not really going to talk about that. And then the idea of practice, of you just got to stick with it. Behavior is really complex, and change, you don't have that delete button. You don't unlearn something, right? You can only learn new things. So we've got to build that capacity to tolerate that learning process. And that is also just such a pivotal thing for family members to understand. And so what I will tell you is this workbook. So this is the Invitation to Change workbook. All of the core sessions I just went over are in here. And there's resources on the FFC website that you can use. And it's a really nice, family members really like this, and they share it with each other. And if any of you want to be trained in the Invitation to Change, we do have an upcoming training. And just so you know how the foundation works, like Jeff and I don't take salaries from the foundation. We have a mean, lean crew of people who've got, I think we have 4 employees who run the whole thing and are awesome. So paying to come to a treatment, buying a workbook, it all goes to the foundation, which allows us to scholarship people who cannot afford to come to trainings, who can't afford to buy workbooks. So there's a whole scholarship. Anybody who wants to come and do something at the foundation, training-wise, family member, can do it without charge. So people who can't afford, we ask you to do that because it's allowing us to help communities who cannot. And it's pretty cool. It's being rolled out. We've got people in Canada and England and across the United States. We've got an awesome group of people who are bringing it to Uganda, and just different cultures and communities are picking it up. So it's cool, and I hope you all get to know it and share it with your clients. Thank you.